Now, moving ahead on this project, after putting those holes in the side and putting the burners in, I wasn't real crazy about those big holes being there. So I made a little cover, just maybe being a little bit too fussy, but this is what they look like installed. That'll hold them there and kind of cover up that hole. And the other thing I did, I took advantage. I had a friend that has another friend that has access to a brake, a metal brake. So I got the doors bent to the angle of this, and those I'll be putting in soon. And then I got the dust bins in front bent. So those are now complete. It looks really nice, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at. I got hinges, two that I need to put on here. Now they seem to be a little bit over the top as far as size, but I got the smaller ones, and when I realized that I would have to lift the door and everything up high enough, because I want these doors to swing all the way around and sit flat back on this, I realized that if I had a larger hinge, I'd be able to adjust this a little bit more and still be able to get that door to do that. The smaller hinge kind of restricted where I'd put the door, and I had to actually lift the door up a little higher than I'd wanted to. So I think this will solve that. Now here's my setup for hinges. I used my magnet, and I've got a block of wood set at 6 inches that I've got blocked from the back of that shelf to the front non-welded edge of the hinge. And I've got those positioned just pretty much straight down the grill. So I have a set of weld on them, and then I've got the setback. I've got about 3 inches from either side all the way across. Now post weld, this is what I'm looking at. Now if you're careful enough and put the pins the same way, they open up perfectly, rest on the back like so. Not perfectly square in the back, but I think for a grill, I think it's going to be okay. See if this one comes out any easier. They're still hot from the weld, I think. There. So that comes out like that. So if you need to remove them, or if you need to re-grease them, just take them off, grease them, and throw them back on. Paint them, or whatever you need to do, clean them, etc. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I just wanted to illustrate. I wanted to keep this within the first half of that grate. And the other piece that I was concerned about was I had a soup pot that I brought out to my working area here, put it on here, and this edge I wanted to stay ahead of this shelf. So from here, from this edge to the start of this is about 2 inches. Yeah, about 11.5-inch grate. So that stays within that. So you can tell the 10-inch burner here, I've only got about 1.5 inches here on the side to keep that within there. So that's kind of where I'm at measurement-wise. Here on the back, from the edge of that, as you can see, I'm about almost a 4-inch circle there, and I'm about 8 3/4 to the outside of the leg. So just for measurement wise, if you tend on making the same kind of hole, that's kind of where you're at. Now it looks like I am about to do some welding on this big burner. Position wise and things, I've had probably a little bit of question, but I made some I notched some 1-inch square to fit around the notch, and there's 4 of those on this burner. And those had tapped screws in the front. So that seemed to work out quite well. Now I only cut those to 3 inches long because I didn't want them to go down to the bottom. I just wanted them to be suspended, and then to attach another piece to the side of those and then run out. Now I played with a lot of different heights. This one just barely fits within this space, so I don't have a lot of extra. But I found that from those feet at 3 inches, if I added another 1 3/8 to that, I was able to get that bottom horn, or whatever you want to call it, off the bottom and still have enough room on the top for the grate to fit on. This one is kind of tight. And on the back, if I can kind of swing around the back here, I opened that up quite a bit and cut out that bottom strut, or that bottom piece of frame there, so that I could access this whole piece. Otherwise it just did not work. Now I plan on making a little bit of a doghouse there to cover that up, but I'll work on that once I get the plumbing and stuff started and see how big I have to make it. So that's a work in progress yet. But I thought I'd at least update you as to where I'm in with this one burner, because this one tended to be a little bit more complicated just because of its size. So that's where I'm at. I think I'll just tack. I'll tack here first, probably unscrew them, finish the weld, put them back on, and then continue the weld on the grill portion. I think that's the best way to do that. Now each of these burners provides a unique challenge to attach this to the grill. This is the 5-inch that I got. It's got 4 holes on the back. I needed something to attach and weld to, and then eventually weld it to the grill. So I made, again, a very simple pattern out of file paper. Transfer that onto my steel, and I drilled a hole corresponding with these holes all the way through for a pilot hole. And on one side I put a hole slightly larger than the diameter of the screw hole, and then in the top I put a larger hole through that same pilot hole that would allow a bolt head or some kind of a screw head to come through there. And actually turned out pretty good. So I just need to weld it together. Once it's mounted on here, I'll weld it together, tack it up, and then take it off and finish welding it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And at least that gives me a start as to how I can mount this one. And then from here, we'll take this and place the burner where I think I need to put it, and attach this to 1 or 2 of the sidewalls inside the grill. Second burner, I ended up making a 2-inch hole in the back to get that back out. As I come around to the inside, 1 1/4 inch was my prop up scrap on this one. And I think you saw the triangle of 1-inch square that I made for the bottom earlier. I made a little bird's mouth piece of 1-inch square there to fit that into the triangle. We'll put that on that side. This almost fits square, and I'm combining it with the 1-inch square from the larger burner. We'll put that in place. And then on the back side, there's another bird's mouth up to the back side. So this angle ended up being about 20 degrees. This was about 10 degrees off of 90 here. It's 90 here, 10 degrees here. A bird's mouth here, and you know, I cut that at a 90. I'm going to be off a little bit, but I think with the weld, it shouldn't be an issue. So we'll fill that with weld. Shouldn't be a problem. So that is the next step, get that in position. And I think distance-wise and everything, I think it should be good. The reason I didn't put it out the front is because this particular one extends so high in there. I would have had to made the hole very high in the front, and so I elected to put this one in the back. The 3-inch has a yoke on the bottom, just like the larger one here, and I think I'll be able to make the hole, if I do go that route, much lower in the front to correspond a little closer with the holes that are already there for these other 2 burners. So that's my thought process. We'll find out when I get to the next burner, I guess, how that's going to go. So there we are. Now, after that mock-up that I showed you, I tacked them on the inside first of all 3 insides, took them out and finished those welds, set it back in place, and then welded it to the frame of the grill itself. So they're all accessible, and if you recall, the holes on the bottom of this allow access to the screws, and you can, if you had to, you could replace that burner as well. So I think I still have access to take these on and off, which I think to me is important. And there we are. That one's in, 2 down, 1 to go. So back in my shop, this is my setup now for this other burner, which has just got a try, and then there was a little tab on here, which actually I did sand flat because it was higher than these 3. So I'm going to put this plate on in the center. I'm going to weld all these 4 onto here, obviously invert that, and then put the nut back on here. But the advantage of this is I can swivel this inside the grill to whichever angle I need it, because this will actually be at kind of a odd, kind of a diagonal, kind of like that 5-inch burner. And this way I'll be able to turn that and put it 90 to at least 2 sides so that I don't have to make any weird cuts. So that's the plan for this one. So here's the setup on the smallest burner. That square little pad worked out well, I think. I've got 2 3/8 on this side, and I've got 4 1/4 of a little 1x1 there, and that is a 3.5-inch square underneath there with the center hole for that burner. I made another 2-inch hole in the front, but unfortunately I had to elongate the hole because of the angle. So that's how that sits in there, relatively centered in the hole. So then all the plumbing will be essentially on the outside, and we'll eventually make a cover. For all this, all these burner outlets. But anyway, that's how we sit, and I think we'll weld that up, and then that should be in place. Well, happy day. These are all installed, and that worked out pretty well. I'm just gonna tack that on 2 sides with that particular one. The rest of them have 3 attachments, but this one just has the 2, and I think that'll work out just fine. The nut is accessible from underneath on the other side of this drawer or tray, so I think that should be good.